The Valakkar event has caused quite an uproar in the community. No matter where you go on Spectrum or Reddit, all you see are endless posts with players complaining about the event. The single biggest complaint about this event is, of course, the PvP. Without fail, the extreme PvE players have come out in force and are using this as an excuse to push for PvE servers, while not entirely understanding what this event truly represents. I'm glad it happened. I'm glad that everyone has had a miserable time trying to do this event. Not because I want people to be miserable, but because the event perfectly highlights everything wrong with Star Citizen as an MMO on a foundational level. So, in this video, I'm going to explain what those problems are and, of course, provide some short to long-term solutions. If you were to ask me what the core principle of an MMO game is beyond scale, I would tell you cooperation. Working with another player to achieve something that you would otherwise be unable to do individually. Star Citizen has that, in theory, but only with large organizations. If you are a solo player or a player in a small organization, you will be locked out of all content within this game beyond running contracts. This is a fact, and all of the most recent events of this so-called year of playability have supported that fact. Unless you are in a sizable and active organization, you simply are not going to be doing any of the new content on anything other than a low population server. And even then, you are likely to be contested. The cause of this is obvious and simple, and it all comes down to a lack of factions. In most MMO games, factions serve as a binding force for the common player and a way for them to quickly and easily differentiate friend from foe, to find and seek out cooperation with strangers they otherwise wouldn't know were friendly. But since we don't have a faction system, anyone outside of your party is an enemy, and the smartest thing to do is to treat them as such. Shoot first, and don't even bother asking questions later. Otherwise, they may do the same to you. I've said it before, and I will say it again. Star Citizen is a low-trust society, and that is a terrible and unfun gaming experience. There are some who will decry factions as bad for the game. They often cannot properly explain why, and will do anything in their power to formulate an argument that discredits the system in their head, but I have come to learn that happens with everything in the Star Citizen community. The most common argument I've heard is that when one faction becomes too populated, they lock players out of content or dominate. This can certainly happen, but that is what is already happening now. Factions make that harder, because they allow players who are separate to band together and fight back, giving them a chance. But also, let's assume we did have two factions in the game. Ideally, we would have three, but I already covered that in a previous faction video. You're welcome to check that out if you are interested. The links will be in the description below. But let's assume we only have two, and we have 3 research facilities with worms. It's very likely that each faction would make one their main facility and avoid PvP, and those who want PvP would likely go to a more contested one and fight for control of it. If you really wanted to spice things up, you could even make that facility give more rewards for those in control of it. Use your imagination, but I think you get the point here. Factions do come with their own set of challenges. No system in a game is ever without its faults. But the strengths of a faction system vastly outweigh the weaknesses of a factionless system. Just go ahead and take a look at the forums or listen to people in game. Fly around any of this year's new content and experience the PvP deathmatch the game becomes when common ground for the average player isn't present. It is my strongest and most sincere belief that without a proper faction system, Star Citizen will forever remain a structureless PvP deathmatch free-for-all, and that is the antithesis of an MMO. I am the leader of a large and successful organization. I do not want organizations to be the only way players can experience meaningful content within Star Citizen. Unfortunately, that is the case right now. If you're solo, you're nothing more than a target for organizations, and they very often will kill you on sight if you are doing anything. Once again, look at the history of this game and its events to understand and realize that. In the absence of factions, organizations fill the void, but they fill that void very poorly. Now you have organizations dictating what other players can or cannot do. It becomes very hostile very quickly. And this has been the norm for Star Citizen since the PU came out. It would be very easy for me to sit here and say, this is an MMO. Players should be joining organizations. And that is correct. But for a game to succeed, it must be both accessible and enjoyable for a solo player, so that they can, if they choose, seek out and join an organization to enhance the experience, as opposed to joining an organization being mandatory to even have an experience in the first place, which is how this game currently is. Star Citizen organizations are a very unique breed of stupid in the MMO gaming sphere. A lot of them come with unrealistic demands and expectations for this very poorly developed game. And because of those demands, they tend to drive players away from the idea of joining an organization at all. Since those now solo players no longer want to experience the insanity of Star Citizen organizations, they are effectively locked out of any and all meaningful content in the game. The only solution to this problem is to address problem number one, the lack of factions. Factions are a safety net for solo players and, again, a way to unite them together to work toward a common goal outside of the machinations of an organization and its egotistical leadership. How long have I been making videos about respawn mechanics in Star Citizen now? I think it's been about 3 years. And while we've had some excellent changes to the system, like the inclusion of medbed respawns and Tier 0 item recovery, a few core issues remain. These issues continue to hold Star Citizen back in terms of event accessibility and general playability. I've done entire videos on respawns, but the Lazarus site highlights very clear problems with the respawn system that can easily be fixed, not just for this event, but for any future content and general gameplay involving respawn mechanics. The first issue is that you don't have options for where to spawn. Your only choice is to respawn at the location where you set your regeneration point, or to log out. This means that if you're being spawn camped, your only options are to endure it or log out. The solution here is simple. Give players more options for where to spawn when they die. I've always advocated for 4 choices. The first is a home planet. The second is a station. The third is a mobile regeneration point. And the fourth is the nearest available regeneration point, regardless of where you have your regeneration set. Having any of these choices would have prevented the spawn camping issue entirely. But spawn camping isn't unique to this event. It can happen anywhere a medbed is involved. It doesn't matter if it's a ship or a ground vehicle, it can and will happen. And the game cannot allow one player to trap another. Give players spawn options, and you solve spawn camping. The second issue is the lack of an armistice zone in medical respawn areas. At the time of this recording, CIG has given players 30 seconds of invulnerability when respawning at a medical bed, allowing them time to reset their spawn or wait for help. But all this really means is that instead of being instantly shot, you're shot the moment you move, or the moment your 30 seconds are up. They've also moved the medical beds from inside the facility to smaller satellite buildings around the main facility. These smaller satellite buildings are also randomly set to respawn you, so that, let's say you're bound to Facility 1 and you die, you may actually respawn at Facility 2. This is pretty good. All of this shows that SIG understands the importance of forward spawn points and is looking for solutions. And while what's been implemented so far is good, a few more things could make it better. Fortunately, the solutions are both easy and already present in the game. The first solution is to add a hard armistice zone to the medical rooms. Players can shoot all they want, but no damage is dealt, just like in stations. But it's important that players can still fire weapons within this zone while being unable to damage each other, because that sets up the next part of the solution, which is to add a one-way shield, inspired by Star Marine's Team Elimination mode. Players inside the shield can fire out to kill campers, while those outside can't shoot in. It's a simple, elegant solution that gives those players being camped a fighting chance. They can choose to fight their way out, or use the safety of the armistice to reset the regeneration point and leave. Either option is better than what we have now. And the second solution to all of this that ties it together is to add a vehicle terminal, similar to those found at mining facilities, to the entrance of the facility where you first arrive. You've already got pads and an infirmary there. Now you need to give players the option to get vehicles. Since we know that setting your regeneration point to a medical bed overwrites your main spawn point, it will be important to allow players to spawn a ship and leave the planet so they don't potentially end up someplace very far away where they do not want to be. Otherwise, using these respawn points will become a trap that adds more inconvenience than it prevents. Imagine this. Your home planet is Area 18. You fly out to Pyro and you go to Obituary and you make that your home station. You then fly out to one of the Lazarus sites to do the event. You land, you get on a shuttle, you find one of the satellite respawns, and you make that your mobile spawn point. There's a very good chance that your ship is simply going to be destroyed by a player flying by, or it may disappear. Who knows what's going to happen? But now you are stuck down there at that facility. So your only option is to go to the medical bed that you've set your regeneration point to and reset it. So now that when you die, you're going to end up all the way back at Area 18. That does not sound very good and does not make me really want to use these mobile respawn points. Either way, going forward, it's important to understand that if there is a point where a player can respawn, they will also need a way to get a vehicle from that point. That concept is why station spawns are so desirable, and it's time to apply that concept to other respawn points around the verse. I don't expect any of these changes to make it into the game for this patch, but I do hope SIG sees this video, especially this section, and understands why spawn systems are critical. They need to be designed not only to deter camping and griefing, but also to enhance gameplay and improve accessibility. My fear is that SIG will throw the baby out with the bathwater and abandon forward respawn points altogether because of how poorly they were initially implemented in 4.2. But the reality is that they should be learning from this experience and using it to refine the respawn system while taking steps to prevent abuse. The last point I want to address is the inevitable argument, which is now everyone is camping everyone, and you can't do these events without camping the people who might come and shoot you. If this game had factions, respawn facilities could function as objectives for a faction to capture and use. Once captured, members of that faction could respawn there. The opposing faction would then have to take control of it to remove the spawn point. Once again, this concern, and most concerns, all tie directly into problem number one, which is that Star Citizen is a factionless, free-for-all game with no structure. Star Citizen continues to struggle with systems that should be foundational to any MMO, namely respawn mechanics, accessibility for solo players, and a framework for meaningful cooperation through factions. The current state of the game not only punishes players for trying to engage with content solo, but also enables bad behavior like spawn camping due to a lack of thoughtful respawn design and player trust. While CIG has taken steps in the right direction, like medbed respawns and Tier 0 item recovery, these are surface-level fixes that fail to address the deeper issues at play. Without options for safe respawning, and without a faction system to create trust and structure between players, the game remains a chaotic free-for-all that might be tolerable in a session-based shooter, but it's entirely at odds with the vision of a living, breathing MMO universe. I don't bring these problems up just to complain. I bring them up because I want Star Citizen to succeed. These issues, spawn mechanics, faction systems, and solo accessibility, are not insurmountable. They have been solved in other MMOs. There are clear, practical solutions already present in the game or easily within reach. But the longer these issues go unaddressed, the more players will be driven away by frustration rather than drawn in by the game's potential. This isn't about dumbing down the game or removing challenge. It's about making sure the experience is fair, engaging, and actually playable for everyone. Not just massive orgs or hardcore sweats. If SIG can learn from these mistakes and implement meaningful changes to all future content, then maybe, just maybe, we'll get the MMO we've all been waiting for.